Baie dankie Prof van Niekerk. U is hier aangeteken en ek ken u ook as die directeur van the Centre for Renewable and Sustainable Energy Studies at Stellenbosch University. And I've also been asked to speak in English here today so that I am understandable to all of our guests and all of our fellow South Africans. And so it is wonderful to be able to say thank you for inviting me to speak at this conference, Professor van Niekerk. And I also acknowledge Professor Russell Botman most warmly, and congratulations on your second term. Someone else must still get his. But I know very clearly that the phrase that you have coined here today, sustainable liberation, will be a sustainable concept in South Africa, and I'll certainly use it a great deal, because when we come to protecting our constitution and doing many of the other things that we are doing, it is all about sustainable liberation. Then I would like to acknowledge Professor Willie Perrold, the Dean of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, Dr. Christopher Richter, one of the keynote speakers, the Executive Secretary of Solar PACES, Professor Jürgen Werner, the Director of the Institute for Photovoltaics, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I saw on your program that you have invented a new category of address. There is the welcoming address that Professor Botman has just given. Then there is the keynote address, and in fact you have two from Dr. Richter and Professor Werner, but you've slotted in between something called an opening address, which is the one I'm giving. And I stand between the welcoming address and the keynote address, so I'll try and be as brief as possible and to say I was on the radio till 9 o'clock, so I asked you please to start without me because my talk was only supposed to be at 9:30, but thank you very, very much for waiting for me because I really enjoyed the welcoming address, and now I'm going to give the opening address. When I, as a layperson, speak to a gathering of experts, I have learned that it is prudent to stick to the notes. I often like to speak from the heart, but on these expert matters, it is better to stick to the notes that the experts have prepared for me, and so I will do that. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this first Southern African Solar Energy Conference, which is being hosted in the beautiful surrounds of Stellenbosch, with some of the best brains in South Africa, in fact, all of the best brains in South Africa here in this field, and visitors internationally. You would have seen that even in winter we have a very credible level of sunshine here in South Africa, and certainly compared to other countries that have made strong use of solar energy, we stand among the first ranks. It is exciting to see that a gathering of this nature is being hosted in the Western Cape for two reasons. One that Professor van Niekerk has already mentioned, because it is the stated goal of the Western Cape government to make this province the green economic hub of South Africa, the green economic hub of South Africa. And secondly, we intend that by 2014, and that is only 2 short years away, at least 10% of electricity used in the province will be generated from renewable energy sources. Now, in my notes, I see 15%, but I've changed it to 10, because I like stretch targets, but I'm accountable for the problems when we don't reach them. So I think that adjusting 15% down to 10% is very prudent and part of sustainable liberation. Also, solar energy will be central to the achievement of both of these aims, and we are going to put an enormous amount of effort into that, apart obviously from wind energy and wave energy, into which Stellenbosch University very particularly is putting so many good cutting-edge resources. Already we are working to ensure that renewable energy is integrated into new infrastructure that we are rolling out in the province. And let me say, when I talk about the 10%, I've learned in every endeavor that I've ever been involved in that getting started is the most difficult and time-consuming process. Once you've got 10% of sustainable green energy as the basis for all energy use in your economy, it creates the momentum on which everything else is built. And so the first 10% is always the hardest bit. After that, it all follows. And believe me, it's exactly the same in politics. The first 10% of a vote breakthrough is always the most difficult. From then you gather momentum and critical mass. And I'm sure exactly the same thing applies to renewable energies. Now, I said that already we're working to ensure that renewable energy is integrated into new infrastructure that we roll out in the province. And an example that I'm going to use here is the 71.6 kilometer long average speed over distance camera network built by the Western Cape's Department of Transport and Public Works. And I didn't know this until I read my notes here, but it is not only the longest such network in the world, but it is also the first one in the country that is entirely powered by solar and wind energy. And by 2020, we envisage the Western Cape to operate with a modern energy system that is highly efficient and where fossil fuel use has been greatly reduced. To realize this long-term energy vision for the province will require commitment and innovative thinking. More importantly, this vision challenges all sectors to come together through harmonized working relationships to make green energy and zero carbon footprints a reality. And that is why we talk in the Western Cape about better together. That is the brand that we're trying to build for the province as a whole. And we are working together with every single sector in every sphere of endeavor, because the only way we've made progress anywhere is through partnerships and being the catalyst for those partnerships to happen and to be productive. We remain convinced that green projects will play a vital role in creating economic growth and jobs for the region. Your work as experts in the field, in research and development, in technological pioneering, is vitally important to our regional enterprise and our need to accommodate greater energy demand. This shift is taking place in the context of increasing migration and urbanization, which means that energy demand is set to rise more and more. And I was very fascinated recently when I came to one of the informal settlements here, serviced by the University of Stellenbosch, to see the enormously innovative contribution that your academics and your master students are making towards upgrading of informal settlements where people are living. In planning, in design, in retrofitting of basic services, and in energy generation, it is quite extraordinary. And the pace of urban migration in South Africa means that it's going to be impossible and completely unsustainable to continue policies of building everybody a new house. We're going to have to take informal settlements where they are and upgrade people's shacks and put in the services and ensure that sustainably and affordably people are able to use the energy that they require every day. And charging a cell phone is no small thing. It actually enables people to be connected, and there's a direct correlation between being able to use a cell phone and being connected with economic development and growth. And we are very, very keen that everybody should have the access to electricity and energy they need to become economically productive, for their children to study at night. And the work that is being done in green energy applications in informal settlements has enormous, enormous potential for the future. In fact, I've been amazed when we're doing informal settlement upgrading, in informal settlements where there are no services whatsoever, no access easily to water except by walking 500 meters to a tap, often no sewage systems at all, no refuse collection, none of those things. People's number one priority is electricity. Over everything else, people's number one priority is electricity, and that has to tell us something. It's also important to realize that the Western Cape is still very reliant on fossil fuels for its energy needs, an energy profile that leaves a negative footprint on our environment. Cost still remains a challenge, sometimes prohibitively so, to the widespread growth of solar technologies for mass energy production. And that is just one of the reasons why a partnership with government is so crucial to the mainstreaming of green energy. I've just been talking about the youth wage subsidy, and their partnerships with government are also critical to create the incentives. And so exactly here, for the use of green energy, we need to use a combination of regulatory requirements and incentives, such as subsidies and tax credits, so that the state can catalyze a society-wide transition to a greener future. The government has to be very centrally involved in those kinds of ways. In addition, we believe the state has an important role in creating an enabling environment for green technology investment and fostering conducive conditions for systemic cost reductions. Over time, technological innovation and greater scale will see the marginal become the mainstream. And it is our job in the next few years in this province to turn the marginal use of sustainable energy into a mainstream use. Global trends have been pointing to in a greener direction for a few years now. It's a new fact that I've also just learned, that since 2008, worldwide investments in renewable electricity generation excluding large hydroelectric power projects, exceeded investments in conventional generation, that is coal, gas, and nuclear, for the very first time. After more than a century of dependence on fossil fuel, the world has been moving into a new era. Solar photovoltaic and solar thermal energy technology systems, which are the focus of this conference, have shown especially great promise, and many examples of practical implementation of these technologies around us, such as in housing projects and road traffic control infrastructure, are becoming commonplace. Some schools have also started riding the green wave, and in 2010 I was privileged to inaugurate a solar power plant at the forward-thinking German International School of Cape Town, which powers 6 of the school's classrooms through that solar power plant. The health sector, the public health sector, is also slowly starting to ride this wave, with a crown jewel in our public health system in the Western Cape, and our crown jewel is the newly opened Khayelitsha District Hospital, has a thoroughly green building with an integrated renewable energy system comprising a solar photovoltaic system and a 2-kilowatt wind turbine. While our ambitions for the Western Cape will certainly build on the foundations established by these projects, the scope of our vision extends far beyond them. The green economy is also a key pillar of our international relations strategy, and all of our bilateral and multilateral engagements with other regional governments aim to enhance the benefit we can gain in this regard. I've just been to the 6 Regions Summit in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and our partnership with Brazil, our partnership with Quebec in Canada, our partnership with Bavaria in Germany, our partnership with Georgia in the United States, and other places around the world all have at the very, very center of these initiatives how we support each other in greening our energy development and greening our economies. This is why, for example, I led a delegation to the Federal Republic of Germany in September last year. Germany is a leading state when it comes to developing renewable energy. The municipality of Veltheim in Brandenburg, where I was the first town in Germany to meet all its energy needs from renewable energy, and it functions completely independently of the national energy grid in that country. These are insights and examples from which there is much to learn. And especially when I was in Brandenburg, in this tiny little dorpie of Veltheim, which is off the national grid, I was absolutely amazed at what they call wind. Man, that wouldn't even be a light breeze in Cape Town. And yet, of that light wind, they generate extraordinary amounts of electricity and energy, and they can keep that whole little village ticking over off the national grid on that basis. Even before that, in 2010, the Western Cape Provincial Department of Economic Development and Tourism established the Green Cape Initiative, a special purpose vehicle that is mandated to implement the provincial government strategy for the development of the renewable energy sector. This initiative provides a platform for close cooperation between the Provincial Department of Economic Development and Tourism, the Provincial Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, the City of Cape Town, the Western Cape Investment and Trade Promotion Agency, WESGRO, and institutions for higher learning in the province. And the partnership is strong and growing every day. With the recent launch of the Economic Development Partnership in April, efforts to build partnerships in the green economy received a further institutional boost. And now we have the Economic Development Partnership, which is independent of government, which will be the catalyst for all our partnerships that have at their heart the need to grow our economy and create jobs. And at the very center of that is our aim to make the Western Cape the green economy hub of South Africa and the key driver of jobs into the future. Furthermore, we look forward to the launch of our 110% green next month. 110% green we worked out as a slogan because in 2 years' time we want to be 10% green energy with 100% commitment. So if you add the 100% commitment to the 10%, you have 110% green. I like that sort of mathematics. And this is going to be an idea sharing and action stimulating platform which will complement other projects on the go, like the Atlantis Green Manufacturing Hub, and we're trying to make Atlantis on the West Coast the heart of green economy manufacturing in the Western Cape, and the rollout of wind and solar energy farms, which are also being rolled out along the West Coast. All of these taken together will yield remarkable progress in developing the province's green economy and providing the means to achieve energy security, a low-carbon economy, and increased job creation. The invitation to this conference contained a crucial statement which warrants repeating, namely that, and I quote, "Solar energy is the most abundant renewable energy resource in South Africa. And it is on this fact that we base our optimism and hope for the future of the green economy in the Western Cape. Our plentiful sun is good for more than just making our province a tourist hotspot. It ensures that we will see many solar energy power plants built in the Western Cape and an attendant manufacturing industry with upstream and downstream linkages, especially the creation of jobs. Because unemployment and poverty is South Africa's #1 problem. And every single thing we do in the government is seen through the lens of how we can stimulate economic growth with job creation. And so the green economy is there because it's crucial that we reduce our carbon footprint for all the reasons that everybody here knows so well, but also because it is the economic sector that potentially can create more jobs into the future than any other, and that is another key reason why it's top of our priority list. The UN Environment Programme, the UNEP, has called for a global Green New Deal, according to which governments are encouraged to support economic transformation to a greener economy that creates green jobs, promotes sustainable and inclusive growth, and the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. Some emerging markets have already embarked on that road and made significant headway. Brazil has set targets for the reliance on fossil power to be reduced by 2020, and China, and we've also got a partnership with Shandong in China, and they were also at the recently held Regional Leaders Summit. China has invested large amounts, at least in absolute terms, into renewable energy. Looking closer to home, we note that the National Development Plan of Minister Trevor Manuel, which we think is an excellent plan in the main, the National Planning Commission's National Development Plan, which was chaired by Minister Trevor Manuel, has set making the transition to a low-carbon economy a key strategic theme, and we support that 100%. This is highly welcomed and reflects a much-needed coming together of minds at different levels and from varying sectors on the matter of renewable energy and the need to move it from the marginal to the mainstream. From the perspective of the Western Cape Government, however, we would add that the role of the private sector must not be underestimated, and a specific commitment to a clear framework for a feed-in tariff system to encourage small-scale solar power generation is absolutely vital. And that is crucial for the government, in fact, to establish that in agreement with the private sector. We need people to come in, and they will do so when there's a viable feed-in tariff, and the government needs to focus on that very, very much to bring the private sector in as a generation partner. In conclusion, I'd like to make reference to the 2014 Sustainable Energy Vision for the Western Cape, the realization of which is driven by our Provincial Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. It is a vision of a Western Cape that has a secure supply of quality, reliable, clean and safe energy that delivers social, economic and environmental benefits to the province's citizens, while also addressing the climate change challenge facing the region, as well as the eradication of energy poverty. It is a vision of a Western Cape that increasingly will go solar, and this conference is certainly an important link in a chain of events that will make up the province's journey to a greener future. I wish you all very fruitful deliberations and insightful learning for the remainder of the conference, and I've certainly learned a great deal from the preparations for this speech. Thank you very much.